Stretch, the last third of the course. This is actually the fun part of the course because we're done with theory. Yay! Instead, what we're going to do over the last 3 weeks is I'm going to try to show you just a little bit of what you can do with microeconomic theory. So this week we're looking at labor markets, what determines people's incomes, why we have income inequality, what causes poverty, all of those interesting questions. At least they're interesting to me. It's a straightforward application of the theory of supply and demand. Okay. Next week, we're going to move into looking at the economics of the environment. You may not have thought about it before, but pollution is an economic problem as well as an environmental problem. Pollution is the result of market failure. Last week, we're going to look at international econ, or more precisely, international trade. So that's where we will get at the question of, are tariffs, is protectionism a good thing? Should we keep out foreign imports? Who would gain and who would lose? One of the things we're going to find out in all of these cases is that in general, when there's a policy change, there are winners and there are losers. And so in an ideal world, what you want to do is maximize the winners and minimize the losers. Unfortunately, as you may have noticed, I know Michael has, we don't live in a perfect world, but we do the best we can. All right. One other thing, if you haven't made a test correction appointment and you want to make one, please sign up. Get on my calendar. On the second exam, the class was sort of bimodal. A bunch of people in the B and up range, and there are a bunch of people in the D and below range. So it's kind of interesting. Interesting as the brain surgeon says, talking about the brain tumor that he was looking at. So it's interesting in a context. All right. So have you had a chance to look at the module for this week? Do you have any questions about that? Do you have any questions about the exam?
I did the wrong module, so I did next week's module this week.
You'll be way ahead. Yes.
So I did all the environmental public good stuff, and then I just looked at your syllabus and said, oops, I did the wrong one.
No, you're just ahead of the game.
There we go. I did have a question though on the exam, and let me see if I can pull it up, because shoot, oh, there it is. It was question number 10.
Mm-hmm.
And it related to question number 9, and I don't remember exactly the context, but it was a 2-part, like question 9 and then the follow on. I got number 9 correct, but I don't understand why number 10 was the answer that it ended up being from my group answers.
Kim, you cut out on me. Could you say it again, please?
Sure. I didn't understand, like when we did our group test key.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I don't understand why the answer was the answer for number 10.
So what was the question? I don't remember offhand. Do you know?
Yeah, my computer is trying to pull up the document. I'm sorry. It's taken just a minute.
No problem.
Apparently I've asked it to do too many things today.
Yep. Oh, by the way, when I reported that crazy question that you were confused by.
Oh, yeah.
I reported to Lumen, and they said, oh, yeah, somebody else reported it, and we dropped it from the test bank 3 days ago.
Oh.
So you weren't crazy, Kim.
Okay, good, because I really felt like there was like something missing, either that or I was crazy.
There was a whole lot missing.
Okay, good. Glad to know. Okay, so number 9 was use this profit function for the following 2 questions, and it was quantity 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then total profits, and then So then what level of output has the lowest average profit? I got that correct. And then question 10 was, continuing with the problem, what level of output Q has the highest marginal profit? And my brain just could not figure out what the math was on that.
Can somebody else help?
I don't have the exam in front of me, but correct me if I'm wrong. But again, it showed what the profit was for each item.
Yeah.
And basically, it was a matter of, what's the greatest separation between those two. And I'm thinking it was just, I don't see the test in front of me, but was the number 4?
I think it was
Q4?
the second choice, at least on my list.
Well,
So marginal profit is always going to be the change in total profit as you produce one more unit of output, produce and sell one more unit of output. So it's going to be the difference in total profit from one to the next. And the way I set the problem up, it was in order of increasing output. And so it was this, I think it was Q equals 2 that was the right answer, but I may be wrong. I'm doing this from memory.
yeah, no, that was the answer. It was Q equals 2 because the total profit was 12. So
Okay, but what was the total profit for Q equals 1?
3.
So it's like a big difference between 12 and 3.
So it's because I'm sorry, who said that?
It's because 12 and 3, like, there's the biggest difference. So like 12 minus 3 is 9.
Yeah. So the increase in the profit was 9 there.
Got it. And all of the others, the increase in profit was much smaller.
Yeah.
Okay. I was looking at that and just could not seem to figure it out. Thank you very much.
But now you'll know it for the final, right?
Yes. Marginal profit, change in the total profit. Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Sure. Who's next? Heather, even though you're looking down, there's nothing for you to be looking at. So it's just kind of like when I say, anybody have the answer, and everyone immediately starts to look at their notes, even though there's nothing there.
I do have my notes. I just don't know what to ask.
Okay. Hey, you haven't made an appointment with me, have you?
No, and I was getting ready to email you.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
'Cause I have a lot of questions, but
Anybody else have questions?
Question is, why did I miss so many? Well,
Yeah.
not so many, but more than I expected. I thought I had a much better grasp than so, but
You said last week for the final exam, it'll be 25% from midterm 1 and 25% from midterm 2.
Yes, it's a quarter from each of the. It's a quarter from the material on the first exam, a quarter from the material on the second exam, and about half the material since then. So it's the new stuff. So now is not the time to quit. Not that you guys quit because you're here. Think of it this way. We're going downhill now. Oh, Henry. Okay, poor Henry. He doesn't have strong enough Wi-Fi where he is to dial in here. So. Heather?
I'm here. I just have so many, and like I just thought when I make my appointment, I would ask you them.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm quiet.
Hey, Heather.
Yes, I'm here.
It might make sense for you to come to my office if you can, because I'll be able to draw the graphs and stuff more easily that way.
Okay, that'll make more sense because some of the graphs don't make sense. So, okay.
Sorry, Michael, go ahead. I'll shut up.
No, I have my question for you.
Yep.
And it was on the second question. If a firm is earning zero economic profits, one can infer that. And okay, so let me differentiate real quick. Normal profits is basically you're covering expenses. You're able to pay yourself a salary as well as all your employees, cover cost of production.
And also, you're earning a normal rate of return for your investors.
All right, I never picked up on that because I thought you had to have economic. I thought that you had to have economic profits in order to earn a rate of return for your investors.
No, because you need to, an opportunity cost of doing business is keeping your investors moderately happy, and that's what's required.
Okay, all right, because just think of it as they're the ones that are fronting the capital for you. They're the ones that are providing. They're providing the operating capital for you to be able to. Okay.
So when we say zero.
Well, but again, I would. Okay, so then I'm thinking that if they're providing the operating capital, and again, I'm making normal profits, still I'm just covering my cost. You're talking about a return on investment, and a return on investment is a interest, something back for what you've put in.
Yes, like dividends, for example. So the idea is a normal zero economic profit corresponds to a positive accounting profit, just enough to keep your investors happy with you.
Okay. All right. Okay. I didn't pick up on that in the reading. Okay. I got it.
So the answer was the firm is earning a normal rate of return for its investors. And basically then if you figure that your rate of return, your dividends is part of your balance sheet.
Yes.
So basically you're ending up with everything in your balance sheet evening out. So it's not saying that you're making enough money to have huge profit margins. You're just making enough money to satisfy everybody on your balance sheet.
Right. And in fact, you're making just enough money to satisfy everything in your balance sheet. It's like buying a lottery ticket and getting your money back.
Yeah.
It's not getting the $1 million. It's getting your money back. So that's okay, Not that I buy lottery tickets.
All right. Question number 7. It was about the difference between the price of a product and what you think the product is worth.
Yep.
And reading about the net social benefit and what the perceived value of the product, what the product was worth to you. So
the question,
I was really confused why this one was incorrect.
Okay, the question is about consumer surplus. Consumer surplus is the difference between which is what you think it's worth and what you have to pay for it. So it's essentially the value that you get that you didn't have to pay for. Okay. In real life, we call that a good deal.
Right.
What would be the net social benefit then?
Okay. The net social benefit is for, say, a transaction is the sum of the producer surplus and the consumer surplus, because the producer surplus is what the producer gains net, and the consumer surplus is what the consumer gains net. And assuming there are no externalities, and you know what that means, Kim, since you read that module,
Yeah.
so that the buyer and the seller are the only ones that are affected, then the net social benefit of that transaction is this consumer surplus and the producer surplus. So it's going to be a larger triangle, basically.
Okay. So everybody feels like they got a deal on that one.
Right.
Okay.
And that's typically the case. You got to get something out of it to make you go through with the transaction. The only exception is the people at the very margin are paying what they think something is worth. So they're getting the product, but they're paying what they think it's worth. So they're not getting a great deal. They're just getting the product.
Okay. And the people who are paying the price for the product but feel like they're overpaying, that they're
then we call them dumb.
Okay.
Because why? No, we would say that's not economically rational. Why would you pay more for something than you think it's worth? The answer would be if it's not really a voluntary transaction, if it's something that you absolutely have to have.
Okay.
Like insulin for a diabetic, then
Right.
Okay. Yeah. But in general, voluntary transactions are things where you end up paying not as much as it's worth. So you're getting a little bit of consumer surplus on the way.
Okay.
Okay. Question number 8, sir.
Yep.
Marginal cost depends on marginal product.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It is.
Okay. Now, if we're at a point where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost, that's your max profit point, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so why would your max profit point not be above the break-even point?
Oh, because the max profit point simply says you're doing the best you can, but the best you can, say in a recession, may still correspond to losing money.
I got you. Okay. All right. I'm sorry. I tried to use logic.
No, I hear you.
Well, so the way I thought about that one is when I think about marginal MR equals MC, that's like that's where the consumer, right? That's where the consumer says that's where your marginal revenue, because that's what they're willing to pay. And that's your output that makes the most sense, but that isn't necessarily all of your costs.
Well, yeah. Well, it sort of is. I mean, it's sort of. Let me phrase what I think you said differently. At that point, you're making no profit on that last unit that you sold because the money that you're bringing in is exactly the same as the money that you're paying out. Marginal revenue equals marginal cost.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean you're not making any profit in total, because you're probably making money on all the ones you sold previous to that last one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So technically, it doesn't matter whether you produce and sell that last one or not, because your profit's going to be the same. But as a practical matter, you won't know that you've reached that point until you sell that last unit and discover that you made no profit on it because the revenues and the costs were just the same. Okay, so you're not covering your fixed costs at all. You're just covering the variable costs on that last unit because you're not making anything extra than the cost of producing the product, assuming that you have your factory already.
Okay.
Okay. So in that sense, you're right that you're not covering all the costs.
Okay. And the analogy that you're doing the best you can, whether you're maximizing profits, is you're doing the best that you can, whether or not it's covering the bills. All right, I get it. I understand that.
It's kind of like why firms are willing to lose money in the short term, because they hope things are going to get better in the long term. Okay. Once you've produced the product and it's sitting on the shelves or in your warehouse, selling it is a no-brainer, because it doesn't really cost you anything to sell it once you've already produced it, right? So at that point, you're even willing to sell it at a quote loss, because that's revenue coming in that you wouldn't otherwise have. Ultimately,
Right.
you have to pay the rent, okay? But today you don't, not until the end of the month.
Okay. All right, and then I'll take you on to question 12, if you would. This one just seems to me to be a matter of semantics.
Okay.
I think both answers, the first and second answers, are saying the same thing, but okay. So if marginal cost exceeds marginal revenue, if the cost of making one more item is greater than the cost of, or excuse me, greater than the revenue you're bringing in for that one item, you're losing money, buddy. Okay, you are losing money.
You're losing money on that last item, but that doesn't mean you're losing money in total. It maybe just means you're producing one more than you should have.
Okay, and that may very well be true, but we're not given those facts about in total. What we're told about is this one additional item. So again, yes, marginal profit is going to be negative because yes, your revenue is less than your cost, so therefore your profits are down, but at the same time, yes, you're losing money for making that one additional item. So I just think it's if you have that question in the future, I would say put an alternate choice in there for that second one, because both 1 and 2 are true statements.
Okay, I'll take a look at it. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else?
I have one now that
Awesome. Go, Heather.
So 15, it says, if a firm's average product is 4 and the marginal product is 8, one can accurately conclude that. And then the correct answer was the average product is increasing, but I put the marginal product is increasing. How come it's the marginal product is increasing, not the average product?
I lost just the very last part of that, Heather. Say it again.
It says the correct answer is the average product is increasing, and I'm just wondering how come it's not the marginal product that is increasing.
Draw the graph, and it's really clear on the graph. Okay, what you're confusing is whether the marginal cost is greater than or less than, and whether the marginal cost or the average cost are rising or falling. Okay, so it's easy to show if you draw the graph.
Okay. Thank you.
And sir, this is the one where the example of the GPA, the value of the test over the value of the GPA.
Yep.
And this is one where that analogy helped me to figure this, to understand this.
Still thinking about your elasticity question.
Okay, yes, sir. Thank you.
Other questions? My day is complete. Heather's asked a question.
So this is kind of a silly one because I feel like I should know it. Can you just briefly explain the difference between shutdown point and break-even point? Because I know that they're not the same thing.
No, the break-even the break-even point means you're making zero economic profit.
Okay.
If you operate below the break-even point but above the shutdown point, what that means is you're bringing in at least enough revenues to pay your workers and keep going. Okay. If you go below the shutdown point, if demand has to keep falling. If demand is so low that to operate where MR equals MC would put you below the shutdown point, then you will actually lose more money by staying in operation than if you shut down and produce nothing and laid all your workers off.
So
Because what that means, sorry?
So when you're saying like paying workers and those types of things, that's variable costs, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So what that means, this kind of goes back to our earlier example where we said in the short term, you can not pay the rent as long as you're paying your workers, right? But once you get below the shutdown point, you're not even bringing in enough revenues to pay your workers. So how long are they going to keep working for you if you say, trust me, things will get better, okay? Even if things do get better, you're going to end up owing more than you would if you just shut down.
Right.
Okay. If you shut down, you owe the rent. If you don't shut down, you owe the rent plus some back wages. So at that point, demand is so bad, you might as well just shut down.
So I had gotten confused on question 17 regarding that.
I said,
I switched
the direct
total
resident
and variable cost.
Okay,
So-
say that again.
Sorry. So on question 17, it asked about the shutdown point, and I knew it was a variable cost because I had remembered the part about like needing to pay workers. But so what's the difference then between the average variable cost and the total variable cost, and why is the shutdown point different on them?
The difference with
If that makes
the average variable cost is variable cost divided by quantity, so it's variable cost per unit. The total variable cost is the total dollars that you're paying your workers, okay? The total variable cost you can't see the shutdown point on the total variable cost curve. You can see it on the average variable cost curve because your price has to at least meet your average variable cost so that you can at least pay your workers. Okay, if you can't pay your workers because the price is below the average variable cost, then you shut down.
Okay. But you wouldn't see it on the total variable cost.
No, you wouldn't.
Okay.
Honestly, the total cost curve and the total revenue curves are not nearly as useful as the average and the marginal curves are.
Okay.
Last chance tonight. All right, then. You know how to reach me if you have questions in the meantime, and otherwise I'll see you next Wednesday.
Thank you, sir.
Enjoy your dinner.
Bye-bye.